Have you ever wondered what existed before time itself, before any matter? Before everything we know, a formless place, devoid of light, where even space had no meaning. Imagine for a moment absolute emptiness. Not the emptiness we know and can comprehend among the stars or in the deepest corners of the oceans. But true non-being, a state of existence where neither time nor space, nor even the concept of existence as we know it, had any significance. It seems impossible to imagine, doesn't it? Yet, what if we told you that even in this non-being, there is a presence that transcends everything we can understand? God is the creator of everything, but this raises a question that many avoid. While others have attempted to answer for millennia, if God created everything, who created God? Where did he come from? Has he always existed, or was there a moment before time when he began to exist? Is it possible for something as complex and grand as the universe to have a beginning without a creator? But then, who created this creator? These questions span centuries, challenging human rationality and questioning our understanding of existence. This is where our journey begins, from ancient philosophers and great religious thinkers to the brightest minds of modern science. Each has grappled with the mystery of the origin of all that exists. The history of the universe and everything in it seems forever intertwined with the figure of the Supreme Creator. An entity so powerful that it could, with a simple act of will, bring into being all that we know, and even that which we have yet to reach. But let's return to the original question: if everything has a beginning, what was the beginning of God? This question leads us to deep reflection. Contemplating a God who has always existed challenges human intellect, for everything we know has a beginning and an end. Trees grow and die, stars are born and explode, and even mountains, which seem eternal, are formed by the erosion of time. Nothing in the universe escapes the cycle of birth and destruction. How, then, can we comprehend that which was not created but simply is? Now, let's go further back. Think about the moment before any light. Before the universe exploded from the Big Bang, there was only darkness and absolute silence. There was neither space nor time as we know them. There were no movements of atoms, no sound, no heat. The vastness of nothingness was absolute, but even in this state of non-being, there lies a belief that something, or rather someone, was already there. The Creator God hovered over this primordial chaos, waiting for the right moment to bring to life all that would follow. And then, in an act of pure will, he said, "Let there be light," piercing through the darkness and filling the void with energy, warmth, and life. Order emerged from chaos. Yet, even in this magnificent moment of creation, the question remains: where did God come from? How can something or someone exist before time itself? Many believe that this question is unresolvable since God is, by definition, eternal. He simply has always been. But does this really satisfy us? Perhaps in accepting this answer, we are merely evading the complexity of the problem. Consider this for a moment: if everything we know has a cause, why should God be the only exception? Is his very existence beyond human understanding, or are we merely limiting our perception? What is expressed in posing this question seems significant in itself. The concept of God for many is something so vast that it seems impossible to comprehend. He is the force that governs the universe, the mind behind every galaxy, every star, and every atom. He is the force that unites all existence, a balance between order and chaos. Yet, at the same time, this force is described as personal, as someone who not only created the universe but also cares for each of us individually. How is it possible that something so great, so beyond our understanding, is at the same time so close? Traveling back in time, thousands of years before our era, we discover that different cultures have tried to answer these questions. The ancient Egyptians, for example, believed that the universe was born from primordial chaos, and that the gods emerged from this state, giving form to all things. The Babylonians had their narratives of creation, in which deities fought for control of the cosmos. In both cases, these gods were not eternal, they had a beginning, a story, and even death. But as civilization developed, the concept of an eternal God began to emerge. Greek philosophers, for instance, asserted the existence of a primordial being, a first cause that was the source of everything but itself was never created. Aristotle called this entity the unmoved mover, something that, though not moving, is the cause of all motion in the universe. Then we come to the monotheistic traditions in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where we find the idea of a God who is eternal, exists independently, requiring no external cause. He is the creator of everything, yet he was not created. This idea is both simple and profound, challenging our linear understanding of cause and effect. How can something simply exist without being created? We are not used to thinking this way. We tend to see everything as part of a cycle of cause and effect, but with God, we confront something entirely different, something that challenges not only our logic but also our deepest notions of reality. And it is this mystery that makes the question so intriguing. Where did God come from? Or are we asking the wrong question, perhaps in trying to understand God using the same parameters we use for understanding the world around us, we limit ourselves. Perhaps the very concept of origin has no relevance to God any more than it does to us and the universe. When we speak of God as something outside of time and space, we speak of something that simply exists without needing an explanation. And perhaps this is the key to understanding the mystery. As we continue to delve into this question, one thing becomes clear: the existence of God or understanding his existence cannot be separated from creation itself. The universe we see around us, with its physical laws and subatomic particles, is the greatest testament to the existence of a creator. Every detail, every process seems to point to the fact that an intelligent mind stands behind all of this. Yet, the more we learn about the universe, the more we realize how much we still do not know. It is in this space between what we know and what we do not understand that modern physics thrives. For example, it has shown us that the universe is far more complex than we could have imagined. From Einstein's theory of relativity, which opened the way to quantum mechanics, illustrating how subatomic particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, the universe appears to be a place full of paradoxes and mysteries. The question of the origin of God continues to resound. Perhaps we will never find a definitive answer, perhaps the question itself reflects the limitations of our understanding. But that does not mean we should cease to ask questions. And here is where the true power of faith comes into play. Faith is not merely a belief without questions, it is the courage to continue seeking, even when the answers seem inaccessible. It is the willingness to acknowledge that some things lie beyond our understanding, yet to continue exploring, questioning, and learning. In doing so, we not only come closer to a possible answer but also engage more deeply with the mystery of existence itself. Therefore, we return to the original question: where did God come from? Thousands of years before modern civilization, long before the first cities were built and the first words were written, in an era when the heavens and the earth themselves did not yet exist. The universe was enveloped in complete darkness. There was no sound, no form, and the very concept of time had yet to take root. In this absolute emptiness, in the primordial chaos, there was only one presence, a presence that, unlike anything we know, had no origin. The creator of all. Imagine for a moment this scenario: infinite space, where there were no stars, no planets, and no form of life. Everything that could possibly appear was absent, nothing but a crushing point within. From nothing will emerge something immeasurable and indescribable that will come afterward. And then, in an instant outside of time, God said, "Let there be light." And with these words, the universe was born. A colossal flash of energy erupted into the void, dispersing the darkness with unimaginable power. This was the first act of creation, an act of pure divine will that brought forth everything we know. However, this is not just a story of how the universe came into being, it raises deeper questions. If God was the creator of everything, what preceded him? Where did he come from? And if he has always existed, how can something exist without a beginning? The question of the origin of God is one of the oldest and most complex ever posed by humanity. And to this day, it remains unanswered definitively. Some believe that God is eternal, that he simply always existed, without a beginning. But does this truly answer the question? Perhaps the idea of an eternal God lies beyond our understanding, something that the human mind, limited by the laws of time and space, cannot fully comprehend. Nevertheless, we cannot help but wonder, if everything has a beginning, why should God be an exception? This question introduces us to an exciting yet complex territory. We know that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old, that it began with the Big Bang, and that it is continually expanding. But what was there before the Big Bang? Just emptiness, just chaos. If the Big Bang was the moment of the universe's inception, what caused it to occur? Many say it was God. Here we encounter a mystery that seems impervious to any rational explanation. For those who believe that God is eternal, the answer may be simple: God was not created, he simply is, and does not need a beginning because it lies beyond the constraints of time and space. He exists in a dimension we cannot fully understand, where time, as we know it, has no meaning. Can we truly embrace the idea of something that has always existed yet was never created? Throughout history, philosophers and theologians have sought to answer this question in various ways. In ancient Greece, for example, philosopher Aristotle proposed the idea of the unmoved mover, an entity that would be the cause of all movement in the universe, but itself is nothing. This unmoved mover can be compared to what we today call God, the force that generates everything yet requires no origin. However, while this idea is powerful, it still leaves many questions unanswered. If God is the unmoved mover, what exactly does this mean? Is he completely separate from the universe he created, or does he somehow continue to influence the cosmos? And if he does not need a cause, why does the universe need one? Let's now delve into the teaching that offers a unique explanation of the nature of God. According to Christian doctrine, God is eternal and unchanging. He has neither a beginning nor an end. He is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of all that exists. This idea is deeply rooted in the scriptures. For example, in the book of Genesis, we read about how God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning, but what was there before this beginning? God alone in his greatness, existing eternally. For Christians, the question, who created God, makes no sense, as God is, by definition, an uncreated creator who exists beyond any concept of creation. How can the completely unchanging and eternal interact with a universe that is dynamically changing? How can God, who exists outside of time and space, influence the material world that he has created? These questions challenge our understanding, and yet, God exists immanently, separate from his creation, but at the same time deeply involved in it. In attempting to understand these mysteries, some theologians have introduced the concept of timeless eternity. They argue that God perceives time differently than we do. For us, time is linear, it flows in one direction, from the past to the present and ultimately to the future. For God, it is more like a circle, where the past, present, and future coexist simultaneously. God is not bound by time, he transcends it. This means that he can see and influence all moments of history at once, not limited by them. This viewpoint may help us better understand the nature of God, but it also raises new questions. If God is outside of time, how can we relate to him? How can he respond to our prayers? And how can we understand his will for our lives if he sees everything at once, while we perceive life in fragments? Each moment presents a profound question, and each one may lead us to new and more complex reflections. But as we seek answers, one thing can be said for sure: understanding God is important for our perception of the universe, Even though we may never fully grasp his nature, the fact that something or someone gave rise to the cosmos is undeniable. And if we reject the idea of a creator, we face an even greater dilemma: where did the universe come from? Did it simply appear from nowhere, or has it always existed, with no beginning and no creator? Modern science has attempted to answer these questions in several ways. The Big Bang theory, for instance, tells us that the universe emerged from an extremely dense and hot point that exploded and expanded, forming everything we know. But what caused that initial explosion? What existed before the Big Bang? Some scientists suggest that the universe may be part of an eternal cycle of expansion and contraction. After each Big Bang, there follows a big crunch. Even this theory does not solve the question of what everything began from. Other scientists propose that the universe could have arisen from a multiverse, multiple other universes, each with its own physical laws. In this scenario, our universe would be just one of many, born from some quantum fluctuation in the void. And if it is infinite, how can we comprehend the idea of infinity? These questions bring us back to reflections on the existence of God. For many, the idea of an eternal creator is the only answer that makes sense. If we acknowledge that the universe requires a cause, then we must concede that this cause is something or someone that was not created and has existed eternally. Although this may initially seem contradictory, perhaps our human mind simply cannot fully grasp this reality. It is possible that the very concept of cause and effect, so fundamental to our understanding of the world, does not apply to God in the same way it does to the material universe. Thus, the question about God's origin may never have a satisfactory answer for human logic. But that does not mean we should abandon our attempts to understand. On the contrary, it is this pursuit of knowledge, this effort to understand the incomprehensible, that brings us closer to something greater than ourselves. Reflecting on the nature of God and his relationship with the universe makes us participants in a mystery that transcends time and space, a mystery that challenges our minds but also enriches our souls. So, as we continue to explore these questions, we return to where we began: if God created the universe, who created God? Our understanding of the physical world is constantly evolving. Science is advancing rapidly, uncovering new mysteries of the universe with each discovery, from distant stars shining in the night sky to the tiniest particles that make up everything around us. The cosmos amazes us with its unfathomable complexity. But the more we uncover, the more we have guesses that elude our comprehension. What do we really know about what exists beyond matter? And how can something that transcends the physical world, such as God, interact with a universe governed by strict laws? Science provides us with many answers. But it also leaves open questions. One of the most intriguing is, if the universe had a beginning, what existed before that, and how can this origin be connected to the idea of an eternal creator? To understand the depth of this problem, we need to step back and consider the nature of the universe itself. The most widely accepted theory of the origin of the cosmos is the Big Bang theory, a colossal explosion of unimaginable energy that birthed all of space and time as we know it. Matter, which later formed galaxies, stars, planets, and ultimately life itself, concentrated in one infinitely small point. This point, called a singularity, contained all the energy of the universe in a state of unimaginable density and heat. Then, as a result of an event lasting a fraction of a second, the Big Bang occurred. But what caused this initial explosion? What triggered the Big Bang? Here science leaves us with more questions than answers. Some theories propose that the universe may be cyclical, with alternating phases of expansion and contraction in an infinite cycle. The Big Bang would be just one of many moments of creation and destruction. The existence of a multiverse suggests an infinite number of universes, each with its own physical laws, of which ours is just one. But even if we accept these ideas, the question remains: what initiated the first cycle? Where did the multiverse come from? These questions bring us back to reflections on the nature of God. If everything we know has a beginning, would there be something, or rather someone, who started it all? For many, the answer is yes. The idea of God as the creator of the universe is deeply rooted in the faith of many religious traditions around the world, but this faith raises another, even deeper question: how can something purely spiritual, like God, create and interact with the physical world? Think about this for a moment. Everything we see around us, all physical things, from the tallest mountains to the tiniest particles, obey the laws of physics. Gravity, electromagnetism, weak and strong nuclear interactions, these forces govern the behavior of matter. They determine how stars are formed, how planets rotate, and even how the cells in our bodies function. But these laws seem inapplicable to the divine. God, as understood by monotheistic traditions, exists beyond the physical world. He is not made of matter, nor is he bound by time and space. Yet, he is capable of creating and sustaining a universe that obeys these strict laws. How is this possible? In attempting to answer this question, many theologians and philosophers suggest that God acts in ways we cannot fully comprehend. His interaction with the material world does not adhere to the same rules that govern matter. While science seeks to describe the laws that govern the cosmos, theology posits that God, as the creator of these laws, is unlimited and exists beyond all that we can observe or measure. This does not mean that God is distant or indifferent to the world he created. On the contrary, many believe that he is deeply involved in every detail of the universe, sustaining and guiding it in ways we cannot fully understand. While this answer may satisfy the inquisitive mind, ultimately, if God created the universe, does he continue to intervene in it? If so, how does he do this without violating the very laws he established? These are questions that challenge both science and faith. And while we search for answers, we realize that we may never be able to fully explain this interaction. Likely, in our striving to understand God, we use the same tools that we use to understand the physical world. Science, as advanced as it may be, is built on observations and experiments. It describes what we can see, measure, and test. But how can we apply these same tools to something that is, by definition, beyond our ability to observe? The idea that God exists beyond time and space is very significant for many religious traditions. For instance, in Christianity, God is described as eternal and unchanging. He was not created and cannot be destroyed. He does not experience time as we do, and each moment of history is like a single instant. God is viewed as transcendent, surpassing all that we can imagine or describe. In Judaism, God is, I am that I am, without beginning or end. These descriptions of God as eternal and transcendent help us understand why the question, who created God, might not make sense. If God is outside of time and space, then he does not need a beginning, he simply is. However, our human mind, accustomed to the idea that everything needs an explanation and origin, struggles to accept this. Perhaps one way to understand this dilemma is to think of the universe as a work of art. For an artist who creates a painting, the result is a process of thought and creativity. The artist is not part of the painting, he exists outside of it, yet every stroke, every color reflects his intent and will. Similarly, God can be viewed as the creator of the universe. Not being a part of it, God formed the universe. He initiated everything, but he does not need an origin of his own, he simply exists beyond all that we know. However, this analogy, as useful as it may be, still leaves many questions unanswered. If God is the creator, why did he create the universe? What is the purpose of all that exists? What is our role in this creation? Many religions offer answers to these questions. In Christianity, for example, it is believed that God created the universe out of love. He wished to share his goodness and glory with his creations. Thus, the universe is an expression of this divine love, a way for God to reveal his nature and engage in communion with creation. The universe is seen as a reflection of God's wisdom and justice. The cosmos is ordered and harmonious, and each part plays its role within the divine plan. But even these answers do not provide a full explanation. After all, if God is perfect, why would he need to create anything? Perhaps the true purpose of the universe is something that transcends our understanding. Why was the universe necessary? Here we again encounter the limits of our comprehension. Perhaps creation is not something we can fully grasp, at least not within the confines of human logic. Perhaps the true purpose of the universe is something beyond our capacity to reason. Accepting this, we can begin to view the mystery of creation not as a call to answer every question, but as an invitation to approach something greater than ourselves. In pondering these questions, it is important to remember that the quest for understanding, the act of questioning who created God or why the universe exists, is not an act of doubt, but of curiosity. It is a recognition that there is something greater than ourselves, something that invites us to explore, ask questions, and reflect on these matters. Although they may seem unanswered, it is these very questions that push us forward, compelling us to continue our pursuit. Perhaps in the end, the true answer to these questions lies not in simple explanations or scientific formulas, but in our own capacity to marvel at the mystery of the cosmos. As we reflect on the vast universe and the depth of our own questions, we may begin to understand that sometimes the answers are not as important as the journey of seeking itself. Throughout history, the greatest thinkers of humanity have asked questions about our existence. Where did we come from? What is the purpose of the universe? What existed before everything? And, of course, the question that echoes from generation to generation: if God created everything, then who created God? For many, merely mentioning this question seems disrespectful, as if it's forbidden to dare to imagine a world where God is the creator of all. It is this question that ignites our curiosity and prompts us to explore the boundaries of human knowledge. It is not about questioning faith, but about expanding our understanding of what it means to exist, and how can we conceive of something that transcends all we know, from Greek philosophers to modern scientists. The question of God's origin, or more precisely, the necessity of a cause for the Creator himself, has been a source of admiration and debate since ancient Greece. Aristotle already grappled with the question of causality and the origins of motion. He suggested that for anything to move, there must be a cause, a mover. But to avoid an infinite regression of causes, where we would always need to find a prior cause, Aristotle postulated the existence of an unmoved mover, which itself was not moved by anything else. This idea resonates in a way with discussions about the nature of God, a being that initiates everything but does not require a cause for itself. Medieval philosophers continued to develop these ideas. In the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest theologians in Christian history, attempted to demonstrate the existence of God. One of his approaches was based on the idea of cause and effect. Aquinas argued that everything in the world has a cause and that we cannot simply follow this chain of causes infinitely. At some point, there must exist a first cause, a cause that was not brought about by anything else. For him, this cause was God. Thus, he rejected the necessity for a further cause. God was the ultimate explanation and source of all that exists. However, even within the framework of religious traditions, the idea of God without origin raises profound philosophical questions. If we acknowledge that God is the first cause and that he is eternal and unchangeable, how can we comprehend his relationship with the universe, which is so evidently limited by time? How can a world be created within these limitations? If God is eternal, what prompted him to create the universe, and why did he choose a specific moment, such as the moment of the Big Bang, to begin creation? These questions lead us to one of the most intense debates between theologians and scientists. Many scientists argue that the universe can be fully explained by the laws of physics without the need for a creator's existence. They point to the Big Bang theory, quantum mechanics, and other scientific discoveries as evidence that the cosmos could have arisen as a result of natural processes. Some, like physicist Stephen Hawking, have even suggested that the universe could have arisen from nothing, and that the laws of physics, particularly gravity, allow for the spontaneous creation of the universe without the need for divine intervention. He stated that if the laws of physics allow the universe to create itself, then we do not need God to explain its origin. But here an interesting dilemma arises. Even if we acknowledge that the universe could have come about through natural processes, does this really eliminate the need for a creator? Or do these laws of physics, which allow the universe to emerge, point to something even deeper? After all, where do these laws come from? Why do they exist? Physics describes how the universe operates, but can it truly explain why it exists? For many theologians and philosophers, this is a crucial distinction. Science can tell us a lot about how the universe is structured, but it cannot answer the fundamental question of why there is something rather than nothing. The laws of physics are a mathematical description of the behavior of the universe. But where do they come from? Who or what established them? This question has been raised by theologians such as William Lane Craig, who argues that while the universe may have a natural cause, that cause must be explained in terms of something beyond the universe, something like God. For Craig, the cosmological argument is the idea that everything that begins to exist has a cause. He argues that the very fact that the universe had a beginning, as suggested by the Big Bang theory, implies that there must be a cause for this beginning that lies beyond the universe. And this cause, he concludes, must be something outside of time, perfectly aligned with the concept of God. However, this argument does not always satisfy critics. Some materialist scientists and philosophers, such as Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett, argue that the idea of God as an explanation for the universe is unnecessary and even detrimental to the progress of knowledge. For them, appealing to God as the first cause is a way to avoid seeking deeper explanations. Dawkins argues in his book, The God Delusion, that evolution and the Big Bang theory offer sufficient natural explanations for the complexities of the universe without needing to appeal to a supernatural creator. He suggests that the question, who created God, reveals the weakness of the theistic argument. As if we claim that the universe needs a cause, we must also ask what caused God to exist. For Dawkins, the idea of an eternal and unchangeable God is merely an attempt to avoid infinite regression without actually solving the problem. However, there is an interesting response to this type of criticism. Some theologians argue that the question, who created God, is poorly formulated. This is because by asking, who created God, we apply the same rules of causality that govern the physical universe to something that, by definition, does not adhere to them. If God is eternal and unchangeable, then he does not conform to the same laws of cause and effect that govern the material world. Thus, the question, who created God, is akin to asking what happened before time existed. The question itself is nonsensical, as we apply temporal categories to something that lies beyond time. In modern physics, time is often described as a dimension of the universe, intertwined with space, arising together with the universe itself at the moment of the Big Bang. Before the Big Bang, the very concept of time may not have existed. This means that there is no point in asking what was before the Big Bang, as before depends on time, and time, as we know, began with the Big Bang. Similarly, if God exists outside of time, then the question of his origin or creation may be moot. He simply exists without beginning or end. This is an extremely difficult idea to grasp, and perhaps that is why so many people throughout history have struggled to accept the idea of an eternal God. We are accustomed to thinking in terms of beginnings and ends, causes and effects, past and future, but when it comes to God, these categories may not apply. He exists in a state of timeless eternity, which challenges our linear understanding of time. Perhaps in this lies the key to understanding the mystery of his existence. in addition to the philosophical and theological questions, advancements in modern science also raise intriguing questions about the nature of the universe and God's role within it. Quantum mechanics, for example, shows us that the universe at its smallest scales is far stranger than we could have imagined. Subatomic particles can exist in more than one place at the same time, can behave seemingly randomly, and can even instantaneously influence one another regardless of distance. This strange behavior has led some scientists to suggest that the very concept of causality, the idea that every effect has a cause, may not apply at the quantum level. If this is true, then perhaps the universe itself arose spontaneously without a specific cause. And if this is possible, then do we still need a creator? But again, such a line of thought does not completely eliminate the necessity of God, for even if the universe arose from random quantum processes, the question still remains: where do the laws governing it come from? Why do the laws of physics exist, and why does the universe adhere to these laws rather than others? For many, these questions point to the existence of an intelligent creator, one who established these laws and continues to uphold the universe in accordance with them. Moreover, there are those who argue that the very fact that the universe is intelligible, that it follows mathematical and logical laws that we can understand, speaks to the reasonableness of its design. Physicist and mathematician Roger Penrose, for instance, suggests that the laws of physics are so elegant and beautiful that they seem to have been discovered rather than invented. In his view, this indicates that the universe is not merely the result of random processes, but rather the product of a rational mind. As we advance in our studies of the cosmos, we realize that each discovery leads us to new and deeper questions. When we contemplate all the questions that have arisen along this journey, one thing becomes clear: the further we go in seeking answers about the universe and the very existence of God, the more we encounter new mysteries. These questions are not simple and often do not have unequivocal answers, but this is precisely what makes them so fascinating. The mystery of creation, both of the universe and of God, compels us to reach beyond human knowledge and to enter a realm beyond the physical universe that directly impacts the reality we live in. This leads us to the question of divine intervention, the idea that God not only created the universe and its laws but also continues to interact with it, shaping the course of events and influencing the lives of his creations. Monotheistic religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam assert that God is a transcendent being, existing above and beyond the material world. However, they also teach that he is immanent, that he is present in the world and actively participates in its maintenance. This dual nature of God, transcendent and immanent, is one of the central ideas in the theology of these traditions. But how can something beyond the physical universe influence what happens within it? For many, this is a question that can be resolved by faith. For example, belief in miracles reflects the conviction that God can indeed intervene in the world in ways that transcend scientific explanation, as miracles are extraordinary events that defy the laws of nature or at least appear to do so. The most well-known examples of miracles come from religious scriptures: the parting of the Red Sea for Moses and the Israelites, Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, the creation of the universe from nothing as described in Genesis. However, for those seeking a rational explanation of the universe, miracles raise more questions than they answer. If God created the laws of nature, why would he choose to violate them? And if he can intervene in the world in such dramatic ways, why does he not do so more often? These questions have led many thinkers to reconsider the idea of divine intervention. It is suggested that God created the universe with all its natural laws perfectly adjusted, so that he does not need to intervene. In this sense, the universe would be akin to a well-built machine capable of functioning without the need for constant adjustments. But this perspective assigns God a more distant role, akin to a watchmaker who creates his work and then lets it operate on its own. This concept, known as deism, was popular among many Enlightenment philosophers and scientists who believed in God as the creator of the universe but did not believe that he actively intervened in human affairs or the natural functioning of the cosmos. For these thinkers, the order and complexity of the universe were sufficient evidence of the existence of an intelligent creator. However, such a view of God as a distant, impersonal creator does not satisfy many believers. For them, God is not only the architect of the universe but also a heavenly Father deeply involved in his creation. He not only establishes the laws governing the cosmos but also hears prayers, guides the fate of each person, and animates existence. Regarding the relationship between the spiritual and the material, the question of how something non-material, such as God, can directly affect the material world is complex. Perhaps it can be better understood in light of modern physics ideas. Over the last 100 years, science has shown us that the universe is much stranger and more complex than we could have imagined. Quantum mechanics, for instance, demonstrates that at the microscopic level, reality behaves in ways that defy our intuition. Subatomic particles can exist in more than one place simultaneously, and their behavior depends on how we observe them. These discoveries suggest that the universe at its smallest scales is not as predictable as we have come to think. Some theologians and philosophers argue that this uncertainty at the quantum level may be the key to understanding how God interacts with the world without necessarily violating the laws of physics. If reality is inherently more flexible and uncertain than it seems, then perhaps God can influence events in the universe in subtle ways without contradicting the natural laws that he himself established. This prompts us to reassess our understanding of what is possible in the physical universe. However, this discussion has another dimension, an emotional and spiritual one. The impact of the idea of God as creator and sustainer of the universe on our perception of reality is invaluable. For many, faith in a personal God who actively participates in their lives is a source of comfort, hope, and purpose. Regardless of how God interacts with the physical world, this faith changes how people live and how they interpret their experiences. When someone encounters tragedy or great hardship, faith in a loving God can provide the strength to move forward, trusting that a greater plan exists, even if we cannot fully comprehend it. Perhaps this is where the true power of faith lies. It is not only based on reason or logic, but also on the human desire to find meaning and connection in a universe that can sometimes seem cold and indifferent. The idea of a God who transcends time and space while deeply caring for each of us provides a reassuring vision that goes beyond the ordinary. This exploration of the boundaries of thought recognizes that sometimes the answers we seek are not necessarily those we can immediately grasp. This contradiction between what we can know and what lies beyond our reach occupies a central place in human experience. From the earliest moments of civilization, humans have looked up at the night sky with its twinkling stars, appearing infinite, and have wondered about their place in the universe. Are we merely a small part of an indifferent cosmos, or is there a greater purpose behind it all, a divine plan? These questions have been asked by ancient philosophers, religious mystics, and, more recently, by scientists exploring the far corners of space and time. And despite all our progress, we continue to ask the same questions because the mystery of creation, both of the universe and of God, is a question that cannot be definitively answered. In a sense, the search for answers about the origin of God and the universe is an endless journey. With each new discovery, every new scientific theory, or philosophical reflection, new questions arise, and we realize that the universe is broader and more complex than we could ever have imagined. It is possible we may never find a decisive answer to the question of who created God. Perhaps this question lies beyond our understanding, and that is okay. Mystery is part of the human experience. However, this does not mean we should stop asking. The quest for knowledge, the desire to understand the universe and our place within it, is one of the most fundamental characteristics of our humanity. It drives us to explore, to learn, and to expand our understanding. Perhaps we will discover that the true purpose of all these questions is not to find definitive answers, but rather to draw closer to something greater that unites us all, transcends the limitations of time and space, and gives meaning to our existence. Ultimately, The question of who created God compels us to ponder what it means to exist and to be part of such a vast and mysterious universe. We may never arrive at a final answer, but the very pursuit of that answer will lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the cosmos. In the end, the journey itself may become the answer, a journey that invites us to look at the universe with wonder and awe. From something greater than we can understand, perhaps the greatest discovery at the end of this path will be that we do not need all the answers to feel the influence of the great truth, whether through faith, science, or pure contemplation of mystery. We may come to appreciate the vastness and intricacy of existence, and it is this that connects us. To marvel at the wonder of existence is ultimately a significant question about the origin of God, reminding us of our own limitations in the face of the immeasurable, and also of the beauty of life in a universe that will always compel us to seek more, to ask more, and to never cease to wonder about all that is unknown.